今天的观众怎么这么多？你想想，全国最厉害的选手邵康和段尔豪都要来了。
你待会儿到比赛就没体力了，不练怎么能提升死亡华尔兹成功率呢？那个，你现在成功率大概多少啊？0。
为了感谢你今天救我，我帮你做对手分析吧。啊？
妥了，这个人一看名字就超级的壮。
你懂个屁呀！你知不知道，邵康跟尔豪可是这一次比赛的热门选手，尤其是段尔豪，他可是万里挑一啊！早点回家洗睡吧。
哎，等会儿，这没打呢，你怎么知道赢不了啊？天哪！
刚刚那个人真没骗我吧？我哥和邓尔豪还真不是一个级别。
冷子峰，没想到我出战就会遇到你这么强的对手，太棒了啊！
哎，两位，裁判来了。
啊，一会儿见。
So I've mentioned in past videos that bell is not very, it's something that you will never find in any sort of weapon for several reasons. But now that he's actually going into a bout with it, I have to say it's actually not even legal. It could possibly be made legal with one addition, but that addition isn't there. And it's this rubber part that is supposed to be on the bottom of the knuckle guard, it is missing from his. The reason why that has to be there is the jackets that they're wearing, these lames, are there to indicate the target area. And the lame is conductive to your opponent's blade. So anytime your opponent's blade hits your lame, that completes a circuit. If it hits your blade, then nothing goes off, and that's, exactly how it's supposed to be. However, if you do not have that rubber insulation, then if you tilt your blade forward enough or have it out of line enough, which, in a bout is very likely to happen, then the bottom metal part can brush up against the sleeve of the lame, which is conductive all the way up to the wrist. This would then make the entire bell and blade live, meaning it will react the same as the lame. This is why you can practice with something like this, but if that was actually going to be in a tournament, you would need to get a plastic pommel nut and a plastic sleeve to place over the very end of it so that it doesn't become live. So they missed something here, but then it got fixed when the camera cut to a different scene. They plugged in and then they didn't hook up the weapons. So all the wires are connected, but you can see here the end of the reel is all the way up to their body, which is where it's supposed to be, because it's hooked onto a clip. But they didn't do that when they first plugged in. That's something that you do right away, because otherwise it will spring back exactly like it does right here and possibly disconnect it. So that's something that you do right off the bat. In this case, both of them forgot to do it, and then they fixed it once the camera cut.
干嘛？我就这么一个头盔，你给我弄坏了怎么办？
事件。 剑啊！
兵不厌诈呀，这种江湖老套人都能中招，还真是穿越来的吧？
你这个家伙，戴上面罩！哎，刚刚那个不算，他犯规啊！
Okay, that was a little odd. The thing that happened first was they both started moving without hearing the ref. That's not something that is ever done. However, what's funny is what happened after can totally happen. If someone stops fencing for any reason, like usually if they think they hit but they didn't, or they misheard something, or they got distracted, if they stop and it looks like, oh, we're not fencing anymore, and then their opponent realizes before them that there was no halt called, and just reach out and, tap them, that is totally valid. The thing is, it's no one's fault but your own that you stopped fencing. It doesn't matter if you say, oh, I thought you said halt. The referee will not give you an appeal for that. Now, the first yellow card that was given, that is a warning, and he gave it for the fencer removing their mask. That's not necessarily accurate. If you take off your mask and throw it out of frustration, or you take it if you take it off while you two are fencing or something like that, then yeah, that's a cardable offense. But in between actions, when the action is already halted, you are perfectly able to take your mask off, especially if you are conferring with the ref about something that just happened that you disagree with. That's totally valid. So the first yellow card was not warranted. However, it could be seen as refusal to obey the ref if you continue to argue with them. In which case, you could possibly get a yellow or perhaps even a red. However, in this case, because he gave the yellow card first, the next yellow card would result in a red. So you get one yellow card per bout that is just a warning. However, if you keep getting yellow cards, every yellow card after the first yellow card is now a red card. They stack up, So the first yellow card shouldn't have been given, but the fact that 2 yellow cards now equal a red and results in a touch for his opponent, that is accurate. So it's sort of like what they're doing is accurate, but they're never doing it in the right scenario. So it's a little bit this way and that.
尔豪应该也是第一次遇到这样的对手，在剑道上这么激动。姐，你真的觉得他会赢啊？也不是没有可能啊。一招一定是试探，关键是在假动作后的那一招。第二意图攻击特别强。
这才是真正的击剑。任何旁门左道在击剑的面前，只有投降的份儿。
哦，真厉害！没想到击剑的真实速度比视频上的更快，有意思。
So far, what they've shown is very difficult to tell whether or not it's how accurate it is. But so far, it looks like 2 people honestly just whacking each other's blades and jumping around. It doesn't look like there's any technique present. So for the most part, when they've been talking about this guy's how he fences and how it feels to fence him, obviously there's a ton of flair thrown in. It's very dramatic. It's not a good way to describe how to fence against someone. However, something that they brought up, they did it with a lot of, like I said, over dramatic phrasing, but it actually is sort of viable advice. They're describing, the first attack is always a fake. It's the second one that is, the real attack. What they're describing is something called second intention. More specifically, it sounds like a feint, which is basically you begin in one line of attack, you wait for your opponent to commit to that parry, and then you switch to another line of attack or even move around the parry and come back to the same line. That's something that definitely exists in Saber, but Saber is so quick, and because you can use the entire blade to score, it's actually not as common as a lot of other second intention stuff. Feints, they can be used, they are seen, but they're rather uncommon. Second intention is a more broad term for anything that is basically not a simple attack. It is not just one action, it is two actions, and the first one is meant to pave the way for the second. So that does include feints, but it isn't limited to that. So saying that someone prefers second intentions is a good piece of advice, but it's difficult to say how good a piece of advice it is without going into further detail about specifically what kinds of second intentions. You would still be way too vague about it unless they only ever did feints, in which case you would say feints.
第一剑只是试探，准备。第二剑才是攻击。开始。得分。耶！太好了。
That was an accident. It does result in a touch, but it was an accident. What happened there was initial parry, and then the riposte went over the bell and hit him on the wrist. The thing is, though, it hit the bell first. This immediately gives priority over to his opponent. Now, the action is so small that what was the riposte now becomes a remise, which is a continuation of an attack. It would not be his if his opponent had managed to hit him, even by accident. But because it was so small, it hit him first and locked him out. So it doesn't matter that he lost priority after gaining it with the parry. His light was the only one to come on. So it is a valid attack, and, it does happen, but I can 100% tell you it was an accident.
实战姿势，准备，开始。
加油，放轻松啊！上吧，好。
So first thing I want to bring up is there's no reason to have a break here. This might be a direct elimination that they just skipped to, in which case it would go to 15. Breaks occur at certain points. In pool bouts, though, because it only goes to 5, there are no breaks. You just do the entire bout. The only breaks that happen are in direct elimination, when someone reaches 8. That only happens in direct elimination. They shouldn't be taking a break here. The other thing about it is, I will say I like how they're showing the parries. It's not entirely accurate, but it's close enough that I can appreciate how they're showing that he's really good at defense. But the thing is, all of this is ignoring the fact that they're barely using distance. The thing is, footwork is a massive part of Saber. Saber fencers will routinely run up and down the strip. I mean, they're not, technically running, but, they're moving very quickly, and the best saber fencers use the entire length of the strip. They utilize distance and timing in every single one of their attacks and in most of their defenses. So distance plays a huge part in having a good defense, and especially in having a good attack. And they're not really doing that at all. They're only focusing on the blade work, which I understand, is more fun to watch for a TV show, but it's not realistic. There's, having good distance is a major advantage when fencing an opponent, so why wouldn't you utilize it? But then again, it's something that every fencing coach knows, so it's something that every fencer is taught. So there's, all these exchanges even the more accurate ones, they're not even that close because they're all fencing within this tightly contained box and they're not really going outside of it. They're not retreating much, they're not advancing much, they're sticking very close to their opponent. So that's already something that, as good as everything else might look, the fact that they're not using distance at all, they're staying this close to each other, more or less invalidates everything they're doing.
实战姿势，准备，开始。得分，准备，开始。
So I have to say, that attack was actually the most realistic that I've seen. The thing is, we only saw it in the very end steps, so all the distance game would have already been complete at that point. So the fact that they only decided to focus on that one part of it, and the fact that it happened right after the fencer came out of the line, that actually makes it one of the most accurate attacks that we've seen so far. And it's also the fact that it was not just a feint, but it actually looked like it was executed fairly properly. There were a few things wrong with it. Like, the main thing, for example, is how he's orienting his wrist. It would have been way easier to have it towards the inside of his body rather than pointing outwards for where he's going. It just looks like he put unnecessary painful strain on his arm, in which case it would slow him down and increase the chance that it would get parried. But other than that, it actually looked fairly realistic. More so in terms of by how close it got. It looked like it came fairly close to the blade and then sort of went around it and arrived. And it all happened in a very short amount of time. That's pretty close, not 100%, but it's very close to the actual timing of fencing, especially in Saber. So I think of everything we've seen so far, that attack was the most well coordinated. Like I said, it wasn't perfect. There were definitely a few things wrong with it, but it was the closest we've seen so far.
二毫不主动进攻，美女的战术就没用了。我该怎么办？只能死马当活马医了，赌一把吧。
死亡华尔兹。
我赢了！我赢了！我赢了！我赢了！我赢了！
First of all, I just want to reiterate, there's no way he would have won with only a month of practice. The thing is, though, I want to bring up again, this Death Waltz, despite that ridiculous name, is based off of a real fencing move, but it's not nearly, this powerful. And what's funny is, they even messed that up. The thing is, you can see him doing all these swishing movements. Those aren't just, to make it look good for the camera. Those are all different attacks. So it looks like he attacked first, in which case he does have priority. But as soon as his blade stops moving forward and goes backwards in order to, keep swirling, then his attack is over. So it's not one big attack with a bunch of flourishes, it's 3 attacks. And the thing is, you don't even have to parry that. As soon as the first attack is over, the priority is gone, and if you even extend your blade just a little bit, the priority goes back to you. So in this case, I'm gonna mess up the pronunciations, but Erhao, if he had just stepped into it or even just stayed there and not Perry just stuck his arm out, even if there were two lights, it would have been his. Because the main character, Lightning, he gave up priority as soon as he started moving his blade backwards in order to do one of the different flourishes. So it would have been, it looks like some huge attack, but the attack actually ended in the very beginning, in which case Erhao would have been able to step forward, stick his arm out, and hit him. And especially since he's in the air, Lightning wouldn't have been able to dodge it or parry. It just would have been too fast to do. The only reason why it worked is because Erhao wasn't expecting it, and he froze up and did the wrong thing, which does happen depending on the situation. But the thing is, a fencer with 15 years of experience seeing a fencer with a month of experience try to do that, I guarantee you wouldn't have been thrown off by it. They would have been able to take it in stride. That was the end of episode 3. So there were some things that they got right and some things that they got wrong. However, the things that they got right were pretty good details. The things that they got wrong were a little more obvious that it was a mistake, at least to a fencer, than in the past. So that sort of balances it out, and I would say this time I'll give it the same score as the others, 7 out of 10. There are things that I think they're learning, but then other things that they're still how could you have missed this kind of thing. So it's sort of balancing out. I also had to remember there's a lot of drama in here that I sort of had to filter out. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week. Bye.